It is not the attacks of enemies that causes us great pain. That is to be expected. It is the betrayal of allies. And the test of any social system is what happens when an evil, manipulative person comes into the environment. That is the test of the ethics of a social system, and in particular, a moral system, because your social relationships, if they're not based upon morality, are based on dry calculations of mutual utility and mere happenstance and convenience. Like, I need some place to go at Christmas, and Grandma Moses bakes a nice ham, and things like that. And the test of a moral system is what happens when a bad person comes into the environment. And I posted about this on X not too long ago. I mean, other than close family, friends, and a couple of business colleagues, I have yet, and, I'm getting up there, man. I've got some accumulated experience in this. And I certainly have had some pretty broad experience in this. I have yet to see a social system in my personal life. I mean, I think it's taken for granted in politics, but in my personal life, I've yet to see a social system that can even remotely survive a sociopath coming in, a manipulator, somebody with truly ill intent who's a powermonger, and also the people who are just kind of amused, indifferent sadists who just enjoy going in and poking around and seeing what conflict they can provoke. There is currently, I mean, I don't know, it's hard to say what is human nature because we're all zoo animals at the moment. But what happens is you've got some social group, the cruel person, the sadist, the sociopath, the manipulator, the destroyer, comes in, and everyone immediately ejects anyone targeted by the cruel person. Let's just use our eponymous Bob. Bob is the bad guy here. Often it's women, but not always, of course. And the bad guy comes into the environment, and everyone immediately, without question, without comment, without resistance, without coordination, everybody immediately says, who does Bob not like? Let's get rid of them. Bob comes in, starts making rumblings, starts sowing seeds of discontent, hostility, doubt, division. And Bob signals like a shark fin in the water. Once you've identified it's not a dolphin but a shark, Bob signals that danger is in the environment. Now, of course, if the community were to close ranks and say to Bob, I don't think you're a great fit for this environment. We don't really resolve disputes in the way that you're doing, or if Bob starts sliding up to people and saying, that Doug guy, there's something off about him, man. I don't know about him. Have you noticed this? Have you noticed that? And it just starts taking tiny flaws or even inventing them and just spreading and expanding them. Now, this, of course, is the sin of gossip, and it's well known in religion, and Christianity in particular. And if the group were to say, yeah, no, please don't do that. I don't engage in this kind of stuff. If you could not do that, I would appreciate it. Or if Bob comes up to someone in the group and says, that guy's a bit sketchy, don't you think? I mean, and this could be someone who's been known by the group for 20 years. Not Bob. Bob's a new person. But Bob comes in and starts planting seeds of fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and, just enjoying manipulating and causing chaos and problems. Splitting, sometimes it's called. And if the group, whoever it is, that Bob comes up to and starts complaining about Doug, if somebody in the group were to say, oh, hang on, let me, I got Doug's number right here. Let me just dial him up. Let's have a conversation about it, because if you do have an issue with Doug, Bob, then let's talk it out. Like, let's do it face to face, right? Or at least let's do it on a call. So if Bob, the bad person, was ejected from the group, if people refused to engage in gossip, or if people said to Bob, if you've got complaints about Doug, the best thing to do is to be honest with Doug and not float around the group that Doug is involved in, bad-mouthing him. Now, all of this is known. All of this is understood. If you were to ask people in the abstract, what's the right thing to do in this situation? And this is part of the whole strange thing about the world. And I don't want to sound too haughty, because for me, for too long, philosophy was merely abstract. But I didn't have philosophers saying you need to implement this in your personal life, right? You read Plato's theory of the forms versus Aristotle's empiricism, and there's not any particularly practical way to bring these to bear in your personal life. Even objectivism doesn't have much of a map on how to implement these things in your personal life. But Christianity is a different matter. Christianity is personal. Christianity is very specifically how to implement Christian values in your personal life, in your relationships. There are, maybe I'll do a show on this at some point, but there are countless commandments. I mean, I've read the Bible cover to cover. When I worked up north, there was not much else to do in a tent in the snow in the nighttime. And there was tons of exhortations and ideas and approaches and commandments sometimes on how to implement the values of Christianity in your personal life. So Christian communities should be uniquely resistant to this kind of infiltration. I posted on X and got some very interesting replies, which I'll probably go through at some point. Why did Christianity start off so masculine and end up so kind of unbearably feminized? I mean, in the churches that I've gone to over the last year or two, it's all land acknowledgements and self-help and personal finances and be nice. And there's no toughness at all. I mean, when I was growing up 50 years ago, I went to church a couple of times a week in boarding school, and the priests there were about as feminine as a hairy leg. Hashtag French women not included. So there was a lot of masculinity in the past. In Christianity, it's kind of gone feminine. Is this a kind of infiltration? People talk about, oh, but the church has been infiltrated and so on. It's like, well, but the church has God on its side. And the church leaders in particular, we would assume, have a pretty good pipeline to God himself. And say, oh, no, but the church leaders have been compromised. It's like, well, then God has to be telling someone, right? If the church leaders are compromised, then the congregation, God would talk to the congregation and say, oh, these church leaders are compromised and so on, right? Because if the church leaders are compromised and God doesn't tell the congregation, and most people get their education from the church leaders rather than the Bible itself, then those people have no chance. Those people have no chance. I mean, it would be like if you raised a kid on a desert island and taught him the wrong words for everything. He would not have any particular chance to speak well. I mean, there's a sort of language window that opens and closes. So Christianity has, at its core, do not gossip, thou shalt not bear false witness. And Christianity says, if you have an issue with someone, talk to him directly. Talk to him directly. Christianity doesn't say, the Bible doesn't say, yeah, if you've got a problem, if you're Bob and you've got a problem with Doug, what you want to do is not check whether it's a just or unjust issue. What you want to do is go and spread lies about Doug to the people he cares about, or the people who care about him. To go and whisper and plant seeds of doubt and hostility and so on, right? And that's the way that things unravel or unroll in social groups. Now, again, please understand, I do say this with real humility because it took me longer than it should have. But I also felt like I was kind of having to reinvent the car from the concept of the wheel on upwards. So I give myself some forgiveness and patience with this, so please accept a similar amount with you, other than the fact that this show exists. And if you've been listening for a while, you know that I have brought the Christian teachings and run them through the process of philosophy and then recommended them as a whole. Which is, if you have a problem with someone, go and talk to them. You got an issue with your parents, go and talk to them. And talk to them, have a number of conversations until they have, if they do that, indicated that they will not change and that will only punish you for further honesty. And then you don't have to have them in your life. Conversations, relationships, affection, love, connection, intimacy, all of these things are based upon the truth. If you're in a relationship where you can't tell the truth, it's not a relationship with anything other than being bullied. Because why would you not tell the truth? Because you fear being attacked for telling the truth. So what happens, of course, is that people get a delicious little thrill when mean old Bob sidles up to them and starts bad-mouthing Doug. Oh, yeah, I don't know, I've always... And everybody joins in a feeding frenzy. Or what Ken Casey wrote about in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, a pecking party, where chickens just start pecking at one particular chicken until they strip him of feathers or kill him. Just boom, 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 attack, attack, attack. That's what they do. And I can't imagine, really genuinely can't imagine what it must be like to sail through life as Bob. Bob the sociopath, Bob the cold-hearted, Bob the sadist, Bob the divider, Bob the conqueror. I can't imagine what it must be like to sail through life doing great ill, doing great harm, and always getting your way. Right? I mean, can you imagine? Can you imagine what it would be like to go through life with ill intent and always, 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 always win? With no resistance. With enthusiasm and encouragement from the worm-tongued court toadies of every social group you ever came across. You come across some social group, some sewing circle, some book club, some congregation, some philosophical community. I know it's happened in Freedomain communities as well, though not always, but sometimes. You come across some community and you just rub your hands together. And you say, fresh meat. What's on the menu today? Ha ha ha. And you boil up a pot and you tell everyone it's soup, and everyone jumps in and boils himself. To go through life with ill intent and always, always, always win. Everyone folds like a cheap tent in a windstorm. Everyone breaks like soap bubbles on the breeze. Everyone acquiesces. And every now and then, and maybe this is what makes the hunting worthwhile, every now and then there's some person who's kind of onto you. And this is probably what makes it fun, is that every now and then in some group or another, there's someone, let's call him Sam, there's someone who puts up some resistance and says, Bob's not great. How's the group been going or doing? How's the group been doing since Bob came along? We lost this guy, this woman, this person. We're kind of tense, we're fractious, we don't get together anymore. This person has broken confidences, he's planted seeds, he's lied. I know he's lied about so-and-so and so-and-so. How is our, somebody who puts up some resistance and tries to rally the community against the dangers of Bob. Every now and then. And this must be delightfully amusing to Bob. This must be what it's all for. Is that, you kind of Clint Eastwood Western whistle, you're standing across the dusty streets of an old Western town. And all the townspeople are up in the buildings and they're scared and there's a shoot-off. It's going to quick draw a duel without the pacing. And Bob is facing Sam down the dusty streets of Dodge City, Dodge Town. There's no sheriff. And Sam is like, man, I got to take Bob out. It's a social analogy, right? And Bob just smiles giddy with glee at his upcoming triumph. Because Bob has come to town and has started tearing that town apart with his lies, his poison in the ear, both Iago and Claudius in Hamlet. Poison in the ear, tearing their community apart. And Sam decides to take him on to save the community. And Bob finds this hilarious because Bob has experience Sam does not, or at least much more experience. And so Bob knows that when they face each other on that dusty street, in the town, on the edge of nowhere, buzzards circling overhead a cloudless sky, a tiny breeze tickling the stubble, Bob knows exactly what's going to happen. Bob knows in that face-off with all the townspeople up in their windows, looking down with excitement and horror at the unfolding gunfight, the imminent gunfight. Bob knows exactly what's going to happen. Sam does not. In Sam's mind, he takes out Bob, and the townspeople cheer, give him the keys to the city, and the whore in the bar will sleep with him for free. He's going to be a hero. Songs will be written and sung. Poems will be carved into trees. His statue will rise above the city square. And tales of the man who shot Liberty Valance will be sung by bald and warble-voiced folk singers well into the 20th century. See, that's what Sam thinks is going to happen. Or even if Bob draws first and Sam goes down, at least he will be lionized as a heroic person who tried and failed to rid the town of an evildoer. But that's not what happens. Not to stretch the story out too long. I'm not being paid by the word. That's not what happens. What happens is there's a twist. There's a twist. What happens is Bob and Sam facing each other on that dusty street in that lonely town. What happens is all the townspeople in the windows whip out their guns and shoot Sam. Now, Bob knows that's going to happen. Sam does not. And that is the true triumph of Bob. That's what he does it for, is to watch the townspeople shoot Sam, the hero, who's standing up to Bob. Because that's what happens. Now, why did the townspeople shoot Sam? Well, because Sam is provoking conflict by not acquiescing to Bob. Because if everyone acquiesces to Bob, maybe Bob will get bored and move on. But Sam, by standing up to Bob, is provoking conflict and violence, and it's Sam's fault. Also, Sam comes from a good family, which is why he's standing up to violence, and what that means is they probably won't take vengeance upon the townspeople. They will simply move away. His wife, his kids, his brothers, or whatever. Also, nobody's exactly going to know, since all the townspeople shoot at the same time, nobody's going to know who shot Sam. Whereas if they shoot Bob, well, Bob's got a gang maybe. Bob's got brothers who are probably as crazy and evil and bad and dedicated and resolute as he is. So that's not good. And of course, if they were capable of fighting out in the open, they wouldn't be hiding up behind the shutters and blinds in the second-story dusty buildings. There's only conflict, say the townspeople, because Sam is causing it. So if we get rid of Sam, there's no conflict. This, you understand, is also the story of the pandemic and everything. So you've got somebody who's very aggressive, somebody who's fighting back, and the social group gets rid of the person who's fighting back. And that way, the conflict seems to evaporate because the bad person gets his way, or often her way. Men used to fight like men. Now they fight like slaves, serfs, courtiers, and helpless women and children. I mean, we see this happening all over the West, of course, right? You have groups that are pretty aggressive, and any group that speaks out against it, the person who speaks out against it is silenced. Because if nobody interferes with the actions, plans, and goals of evildoers, conflict is diminished, because if you give someone what they want, they tend not to fight you. But if you resist what they want, right, the most dangerous time to leave an abusive relationship, so the most dangerous time in an abusive relationship is when you are leaving, when you're trying to get out. That's when the danger, the beatings, the violence, sometimes even the murders, erupt. See, it looks okay as long as you're complying. The moment you stand up for yourself, the violence comes out. Things were peaceful until Sally decided to try to leave Bob. And dealing with Bob is actually quite easy. If you simply say, right, the 1, 2, 3. 1, don't trash talk Doug behind his back. 2, if you do that, if that's your habit, this is probably not the group for you. And 3, if you've got a problem with Doug, I'll dial him up right now. Let's hash it out. Done. Then the bully is going to move on because there's lots of social groups. And you have some pride. You have some self-respect. You're actually living by the values you proclaim and the values that you instill and inflict into and upon your children. Have some dignity, some integrity. But nope, everybody just folds. Honestly, it's like Jenga in a hurricane. It's like a house of cards with a geisha rushing by, the flowing robes, knock everything over. There's not even any resistance. This is the foundational corruption of the world. Now, again, I've not been perfect in this way. Caveat, caveat, caveat. But to a reasonable degree, I have taken on the Bobs of this world. To a reasonable degree. Not perfect, inconsistent sometimes, but where I have been conscious of it, I have tried to fight the good fight. And I've lost some, I've won some. In the business world, I had my share of Bobs around. When I was a director, hired into a company as a director, there were 2 Bobs in the organization. And it took me 6 months, but I got them out. And I remember people coming to me almost in tears, thanking me. I've won some, I've lost some. At times I've been kicked out. But in general, as a whole, I've tried to take on the Bobs of this world. And I have tried to take on the Bobs of this world alone. Again, if you're supporters, and I appreciate that. But in the public sphere and square, everyone's seen it for over 20 years, that when I take on Bob, everybody runs away. There's a premium show about this, The Truth About My Deplatforming, which I recorded a couple of days ago. This is late March 2026. You can check it out in the premium section, freedomain.com/donate to subscribe, get a hold of that. So I won't go into it in more detail here because that's really a donor thing. And then the power of Bob. Let's switch genders just to mix it up a little. And we'll say Mary. Mary. No, it's too Christian. Let's make it Wanda. Wanda. Yeah, Wanda. Why not? Wanda. Now, Wanda, let's say, was a bad person. And Wanda dies. What happens at the funeral? Well, we all know. What happens at the funeral? Celebrations, dewy-eyed tributes, lovely pictures. And you cannot speak ill of the dead. This is the Robert Mueller thing, right? With Trump. You cannot speak ill of the dead. Why don't people want to speak ill of the dead? Well, they can't do you direct harm anymore. But of course, there is this belief in ghosts that the bad people live on after they die and will attack you if you speak ill of them. Well, in any community, if you speak ill of Wanda, you are also criticizing the community that supported and enabled Wanda. And her allies will come for you. This is what is meant by ghosts. Also, if you've known Wanda for a long time, Wanda lives on forever in your mind, in your head. She's an alter ego. She's part of your consciousness. She's part of what I call the Miko system, which is not we. We're not an I, but a we, an aggregation and collection of genetic traits, personal experiences, personal choices, and just about everyone we've ever rubbed shoulders with for more than 5 minutes comes in to our mind and takes up permanent residence. It's why it's very important to choose the company you keep. Choosing the company you keep is determining the peace or virulence of your mind. Choice of companions equals choice of consciousness. What is in your mind? And some people we can choose. Of course, as children, we cannot choose. Our parents, our family, our circumstances, our school, our teachers. We can choose our friends to some degree, but a lot of our friends are chosen, or what's on the menu of friendships is largely predetermined by our parents and how they have taught us. If you've been raised in a brutal, negative, hostile, destructive environment, it's kind of tough to make friends with the functional kids because you're just too jumpy and scattered and defensive. And they all scan that. So even the palette of your friendships with which you paint your social circle is largely limited and controlled by your parents. Maybe directly, certainly indirectly. So Wanda dies, and we can't speak ill of the dead because Wanda might haunt you. Well, in a way, that's true. Because if you weren't able to criticize Wanda in life, and Wanda has taken up residence in the mental patterns of your consciousness as a defense mechanism against Wanda's dangerous tendencies in real life, then if you speak ill of Wanda, you activate the alter ego of Wanda in your mind. That is the ghost aspect or apparatus. And so people will not speak ill even of the evil dead. That is considered forbidden, verboten, because Wanda has allies, Wanda has taken up residence in your head, and to criticize Wanda after she dies is to provoke the same kind of defenses that existed to protect you from Wanda by stopping you from criticizing her when she was alive. I don't know how to create a community that is resistant to the urge by evildoers to turn human communities into bowling alleys. Right? Now, the satisfaction that you and I, if you like bowling, get when we bowl a nice thunder jugger strike, they all go down. That's good. That's a good feeling. Doing some mini golf, get a hole in one. Serve a perfect serve, get an ace. In tennis, somebody rushes the net. You got to do a lob. A lob is too high for them to hit at the net, bounces behind them still in bounds, and it causes them to have to retreat from the net, which means you can rush the net. It's really hard to return the lob with a lob, so it's fencing. It's micro skills. The satisfaction that you and I would get from bowling a perfect strike, well, we get to knock everything down, and that's really satisfying. And of course, there are two types of people in the world. Well, three, I guess. Number one, the people who love to build. Number two, the people who love to destroy. And number three, the enablers of the destroyers. So people like Bob get the same satisfaction out of ripping apart and destroying a social group as you and I get from a perfect serve, a perfect sink of a putt, a perfect strike in bowling. It's satisfying to apply these micro skills to a perfect outcome, and they love it. And of course, what happens is when Bob comes into the social circle, sets everyone against each other, gets them to turn on Doug the good guy, Sam the good guy, then, of course, when all of the destruction is complete, what does Bob do? What does Wanda do? Well, they move on. They move on. Right after the shark has eaten the seal, it doesn't follow the fading skeleton, the bloody remnants into the depths. No, leaves those for the crabs and the shrimp and the krill. The tiny non-predators can feast on the carcass. I'm moving on because Mommy and Daddy need their feast. So after Bob or Wanda has torn apart this social group, they enjoy the chaos. They enjoy what? What do they enjoy? They certainly enjoy tearing the group apart, as you and I would enjoy bowling. And they enjoy inflicting the brutal lessons of the real world on any proto-hero who tries to stand up against them, thinking that, well, I'm fighting the good fight. Everyone agrees with me. Everyone's got the same values. Be honest. Don't gossip. Stand against evildoers. But Bob is like, oh, Doug, man, Sam, you guys are funny. I think it's time for you to learn the truth about this world. Is that people lie to themselves about being good, and that is what they prefer to actual virtue. Because lying to yourself about being good, when you are in fact a colluder with evil, lying to yourself about being good is much easier than actually being good. It's easier to buy some Spanx or a corset than lose weight. So, Bob is a brutal educator. Bob is a brutal educator. Wanda is a brutal educator, teaching the wayward, semi-virtuous resistors or virtuous resistors of evil who attempt to rally a social group dedicated to virtue to actually doing something virtuous. Nope. So the sad thing is that the group colludes with Bob and Wanda against Doug and Sam. And then Bob and Wanda, if it's a social group, they'll just move on. And the group is broken. And the group that remains, the shattered innards of the broken seal, the group that remains dissolves. They can't look each other in the eye because they know deep down what just happened. That a dangerous person came into their life and they all turned on, attacked and expelled the only person willing to stand up to the bad guy. And they can't look at, the whole thing is broken. They can't look at each other. They can't stomach each other. And the group falls apart. See, they lose the group anyway. Or those remnants that remain are really sad and pathetic. And so they're going to lose the group anyway. And it's just social stuff. How often are Bob and Wanda armed? No, it's not a thing. And what Bob and Wanda like as they wander off is that they have inflicted the greatest curse of the aftermath of evil, which is they have caused everyone who's come in contact with them, except Doug and Sam and whoever stands up to them, they have inflicted the greatest curse that evil is capable of. And the greatest curse that evil leaves in its wake, in its aftermath, in the fading bright light of its atomic infliction of potential self-knowledge, the true curse that evil leaves behind is permanent lying to the self. Permanent lying to the self. Because everyone in the shattered aftermath of Shark Fin, Bob, and Wanda moving through and shredding their social circle, everyone goes to themselves, maybe complains to others, man, oh, God, what happened there? Holy crapola. Holy crapola. I mean, what the hell happened there? And they pretend ignorance. I don't know, man. I guess Bobby quit, Jody got married. I don't know. I guess it wasn't that great a group to begin with. I don't know what happened there, man. All these secrets came tumbling out. Everyone turned against each other. Oh, it's human nature, I guess. I don't know, man. Wasn't that great a group to begin with. People say, hey, you used to hang out with this chess club, this book club, this D&D club, this social club, this bowling league. Like, what happened? Oh, man, it was a shit show. Turned out this and this and this and blah, 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 blah. And nobody can tell the truth. Nobody can tell the truth. Once evil can get you to lie to yourself, your job is done. Because once you have the convenience of lying to yourself, you never have to do good again for the rest of your life. Because you can just lie to yourself about being a victim, about other people always being at fault. It's never you. You didn't do anything wrong. Circumstances happen. Stuff happened. It's like physics. It's like gravity. You don't blame those forces for the things in the world. Nobody gets on a scale and says, well, gravity must have been dialed up over the last month. No. It's like physics, this is just the way things are, human nature, blah, blah, blah. The fall of man, we're born sinful, whatever. So the aftermath, why they move on, is their job is done. They have now got everyone to lie to themselves about what happened to their social circle, and nobody will ever reach out to the few good people who tried to stand up to the evildoers and say, never, never, never will this happen. Get it out of your mind. In the world that is, it is not a possibility. You might as well expect to wake up on the moon. You will never get a message. If you are a Doug or a Sam, somebody who stands up to evildoers, you will never get a message later on saying, man, you know what? I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. there you were, standing alone against this terrible person. And I nodded along with the bad guys, and I didn't give you any help or support. I didn't even send you any messages of encouragement. I just kind of withdrew into my shell, went along, nodded along. I'm so sorry. It was a humbling and brutal experience to realize the corruption that I was capable of. I don't know if we can reestablish our friendship or anything like that, but oh my God. I really did you dirty, man. I really, really betrayed you, and you deserved better, and you deserved an ally, or at least not somebody who handed the knives to the backstabbers. I'm sorry. You're never going to get that message, my friends. I've been fighting since my mid-teens against the Dougs, the Wonders, and I cannot think of a single message that came after being betrayed, as inevitably happens in the good fight against the bad people. I cannot remember a single message from people saying, you were right, you were doing the right thing, I did the wrong thing, I'm sorry, can you forgive me, I've learned better. Nope, doesn't happen. Doesn't happen. Doesn't happen. This is the world wherein the truth is that parenting and child abuse is far worse than we can think, and it's far earlier than we think. And this is why people hate philosophy, because philosophy removes from people the ability to lie to themselves. That's what philosophy does. I hear about a conflict. I say, oh, okay, so Bob was doing this bad stuff. Doug was trying to do the right stuff. What happened? And you get all this fog, right? You just get all this fog. Well, it was complicated. Well, I'm not really sure. I tried to do this, but that didn't really. You just get all this fog, right? You just ask the basic questions. So Bob was in the wrong. Doug was in the right. What did you do? Well, I tried to talk to Bob and I, blah, 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 blah. It's like, okay, yes, but Bob wasn't listening. So Bob was in the wrong. Doug was in the right. What did you do? And you get to the core. Nothing. You certainly did nothing to help the good guy, which helps the bad guy. And that is the world that is. And if you can find yourself half a dozen or a dozen people who will stand by you through thick and thin, and with whom you will stand by through thick or thin, you have a golden treasure in this watery world. That's not ideal as an analogy, because if you're holding golden treasure in a watery world, you sink, Kevin Costner style. So let's try that again. You have a bright light in the Stygian darkness of this planet. Now, having a bright light in the Stygian darkness of this planet is going to draw you both friends and enemies. So beware. Be alert and test people for their moral courage early on.